Today's video is sponsored by Manta Sleep. Do you find yourself not being able to get a good night's rest? Or maybe you're running out of energy throughout the day? You like taking naps? I do. Problem is, light sources tend to mess with sleep. Fortunately, Manta Sleep is here to get you through the best sleep you've ever had. They offer 100% blackout sleep masks to help you get a much deeper sleep. They're soft, breathable, completely adjustable, and super comfortable, putting zero pressure on your eyes. They offer quite a few masks with a variety of features. I have the Manta Pro Sleep Mask. They also have one with Bluetooth connectivity for people who like to fall asleep to sounds, one that's weighted, and some with cooling and heating pads. Right now, Manta Sleep is offering 10% off for anyone who uses my discount code in the description. So if you want to get the best sleep possible while also supporting the channel, use my link and get yourself a great sleep mask today. And thank you again for Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. Alright, so we're continuing with the Zero project, and today is all about the Z-Knuckle. As I said in part 4, the Z-Knuckle didn't do a lot in the original game. Its purpose was to grab objects and take weapons from enemies. So I wanted to show it a bit more love in this project. Zero can now freely attack with it in a way that'll make Itadori proud. And he has the Hadouken, Tatsumaki, and Shoryuken as special attacks. In today's video, I'm going to be tweaking a few things and adding the true purpose of the Z-Knuckle, which is taking everyone else's shit. Sorry. Let's start with the smaller changes. I tweaked the Hadouken and made it slightly larger and slowed the move speed a little bit. I still want to change the visual effects of it, but that can be done later. Next up is Zero's combo string with the Z-Knuckle. I initially set it up to be both punches and kicks, but for now the kicks have been removed. Also, the second to last attack in the string have been changed to these rapid punches. I felt like it was a missed opportunity to have Zero throw hands and not have a rapid punch attack. The last hit of the string has been tweaked to knock the enemy back a little bit more, as well as added some visual effects to it. This also works in the air and knocks the enemy downward. The next change was actually suggested in the comments, and I thought it was a pretty cool idea, and that's having the triple rod extend like it does in the original game. This only happens during the last attack in the combo string, but I feel like it is a nice detail to add, and to be honest, it kind of opens up possibilities for new attacks for the triple rod. In the official game, if Zero hits an enemy with the Z-Knuckle, he's able to take their weapons and use them for himself. There are quite a few of them, and I'll go ahead and say now I won't be adding all of them in this project. There are a few types, but here's the basic breakdown. Each of them fall into the following categories: Buster, which is basically anything that shoots; Saber, melee weapons that are swung like a sword; Rod, long weapons like spears, pretty much anything that pierces; Shields, which are just defensive weapons; and Bomb, things that go boom. I decided to give myself a little leeway here and allow Zero to be able to use stealable weapons that don't necessarily show up in Mega Man 04, but still fall within these same categories. To start things off, I set up the stealing attack, which is just an open palm strike. This is done by pressing the sub weapon attack button, which, as I said before, was originally being used for kicking attacks. If the attack connects with an enemy that has a stealable weapon, Zero will take it and will go into this animation here, showing that the steal was successful. From here, pressing the sub weapon button will make Zero attack with the stolen weapon instead of performing a stealing strike. I also added a way for Zero to throw away his stolen weapon by pressing one of the EX attack buttons. Afterwards, Zero can go back to running enemy pockets. I kick things off with the Saber type. There are a few of these, so I split them into subcategories. Light can attack quickly and multiple times. Heavy, which performs one big swing attack, but is slower than light. And then Geeky, the slowest of the three, but hits the hardest. The biggest challenge I initially faced here was finding weapon models that resemble those from Mega Man 04. For light weapons, I used the iron sword that was already being used with the test enemy. When attacking with this one, Zero can perform a 3-hit combo, which also works in the air. At this point, I figured it would be a better idea to set up some dummies to hold stealable weapons instead of throwing in more enemies. Next up, we have the Heavy Saber. I used an axe for this. Heavy Sabers perform a wide horizontal swing that knocks enemies back. And finally, we have the Geeky category. I used this hammer model to test this one. The ground attack is a big multi-directional ground strike, and if used in the air, Zero falls towards the ground before releasing the attack. Keep in mind, this is just the groundwork for these, and I'll be adding different ones with their own abilities over time. Next up are the Buster type weapons. The term Buster is going to be used a bit loose here. and it's pretty much just going to refer to anything that's ranged instead of breaking them down into subcategories. And I decided to kick things off with a minigun. The model comes from Megaman X Dive, and to be honest, I'll probably be using a lot of these. I started with getting the animation set up. It's actually the same one as the Buster, but thanks to an asset called Final IK, I'm able to adjust his arms using inverse kinematics to place them in a position that works. A few of Zero's other animations are also tweaked with this, and it's all handled through code. After getting the animation set up, cut the camera. After getting the animation set up and getting Zero a chiropractor, the next thing to do was to set up shooting. I decided to make the minigun a hit scan weapon. Now, for those who don't know what this means, think of it like this. In some shooting games, when a gun is fired, there's an invisible line or ray that's sent forward. Anything hit by that ray is what gets hit by the shot. The main reason I'm doing it this way is because projectiles in this project are physics-based, and rigid body hit detection can be a bit iffy with small, fast-moving objects. And the minigun is going to be firing a lot of small, fast-moving objects. Once the code was done, I set up a trail renderer to represent the bullets to see how they would look. And I'd love to show that part, but the footage got corrupted. At this point, the next thing to do was to set up some VFX for the bullets, the impacts, and the trails. Now, as I said before, the minigun uses hit scan, meaning the target is hit instantly. So my solution here was, when a shot is fired from the minigun, the raycast returns to the position that was hit, and it spawns the impact object there. Within that object are 3 particle systems, one for the impact, one for the bullet, one for the trail. The impact particles are placed at the position that was hit, while the bullet and trail are placed at the muzzle of the minigun. From here, the bullet and trail are both moved towards the impact position, giving the illusion that the minigun is firing projectiles. Fortnite also uses a similar method for most guns. Next, I opened the minigun model in Blender and exported it as separate objects, the barrel and the body, so that the barrel could be spun up before firing. Finally, I added some camera shaking and threw in some sound. I know there's no stealable minigun in Mega Man 04, but this project isn't limited to only what appeared in that game, nor Mega Man as a franchise. So if I want Zero to go burr, Zero go. Unlike the minigun, the next shootable weapon is projectile based and also comes from Mega Man X Dive.
Rocket launcher.
Like the minigun, the animation is the same as the one with the Buster, just tweaked with IK. The only difference is that Zero one-hands the rocket launcher because Zero is him. The launcher is pretty straightforward, so I don't have much to go over for it. When fired normally, the rocket travels upward until it hits something or explodes on its own after about 5 seconds. I wanted to try to give it a little something extra, so when locked onto something, it tracks the target.
Psych!
Yo, where are you going? Okay, I fixed it. On to the next one. Now for the Riot Weapons. I'm going to be splitting these into 2 types, piercing and swinging. Piercing ones will be covered in this video and will act as poking weapons. Swinging rods will, as their name says, be swung around, kind of like how the partisan works in NGS. NGS is a big inspiration for the combat and visuals that I'm going for in this project. The first of these is the drill rod. In the original game, this gives Zero a drill attack that extends forward. For the appearance, I use Command Mission X's Buster, and for the drill bits, no pun intended, okay, maybe a little, I used parts from the drill head cannon weapon in X Dive. It imported into Unity as a single model, so I had to open it in Blender and manually export these sections as needed. And once I did, I noticed that the back of the drill was open.
I ain't got no face.
After fixing that in Blender, I added a cylinder to act as the shaft of the drill and set up some animations for extending and retracting. The spinning of the drill was handled with code later. I added some particles to the tip of the drill and where it connects to the base, and I feel like it really sells the look when seen with the spinning and the animations. Also, Zero's attack with the drill has a bit of a startup, so you can see the drill begin to spin before attacking. The last thing to do is to set up the damage. With it being a rod, it pierces. It also hits 3 times. The next rod type is the Flame Saber. It's pretty much just a piercing blade of fire, so I really didn't do anything special for this one. I used X's Command Mission Buster again, just tweaked the texture to make it red and gray. For the blade, I used the same fire particles from Ryu Engine, and I also reused the burst effect from the triple rod. One thing I do like about it though is the little effect just before he strikes where you can see some of the fire. I could definitely do more with it, but at this point, I was more focused on just testing things out. Next up are shields. In the original game, all of these virtually did the same thing and allow Zero to block incoming projectiles, and some did things when hit by the enemy. I decided to break these down into 3 categories: active, passive, and reactive. Active shields will be the ones that Zero can hold out continuously. Passive shields will be the ones that Zero cannot actively block with, but can instead use them to trigger defensive buffs. And reactive shields will function the same as the shield boomerang, meaning they can't be held out continuously, but can be briefly brought out in order to parry. And they'll also have some sort of offensive attack. We'll kick things off with the ice shield. When it blocks an enemy projectile, it would fire ice crystals in 6 directions. I decided to make this one a reactive type. For the visuals, I used the same shield model from the shield boomerang and these crystals from an asset pack I found on the asset store. I just tweaked the material to be transparent and adjusted the scale a bit. I think it looks cool. I also added some ice particles that play when the shield appears. When hit by an enemy attack, it reacts by releasing ice spikes in front of it. And as for the offensive ability, I used the way it works in the original game as inspiration. So Zero can sacrifice the shield in order to fire ice crystals forward. If locked onto an enemy, the crystals will track them. The next one doesn't appear in the original game and is going to be a passive shield. I just call it the 3-hit shield. For this one, I just used a random shield model from the same asset pack as the ice crystals from earlier. And remember, none of this is permanent, just focusing on getting the mechanics down. When triggered, this one spawns 3 rotating shields around Zero that will nullify up to 3 attacks. The incoming attacks do not need to actually hit the shield models. On each hit, one of the shields is disabled and the particle system plays. Well, they would, except for some reason, one of them wouldn't work, and I spent way longer to fix it than I should have, because the problem wasn't even a real problem. And, okay Keely, calm down. Allow me to introduce you to what I call non-issues. Basically, there are problems that are far smaller than they appear to be, and for whatever reason, cause issues when everything looks like it should work. In this case, the code was fine and the particle systems were set up correctly. The issue was something I glanced at multiple times while trying to find the problem, and that's this. Long story short, I really need to get more sleep. With that out of the way, I move on to the last weapon type, bombs. For the bombs, these were all throwable weapons in the original game, and there were quite a few of them. But the thing is, a lot of them were just the same thing. You throw it and it explodes. Some were kind of cool, like this one that releases a bunch of insect robots that fly into a target.
Tonight, you
really gonna do me like that?
But for the most part, they were all the same. So I'm going to be experimenting with a few of these down the line, but for now I added 2. The 3-ray bomb normally just explodes and sends 3 projectiles outward. While this works in 2D space, I don't think it would here. So I made it into more of a cluster bomb. For appearance, I just used a sphere with a lava material on it, since that's basically what it looks like. And I set up 3 smaller ones that spawn when the main one collides with something. I decided to set the controls up so that the player could go into over-the-shoulder mode to throw them. Once again, it uses the same animation that the guns use, just tweaked with IK. Also, if Zero's locked onto an enemy, he'll just chuck it at him. From here, I moved on to the rising bomb. When thrown, it raises fire from the ground. I decided to make it work like a Molotov and create a pool of fire instead. But in hindsight, I could have also made it work like a thermite from Apex. For the model, I used the shield capsule from XDive. I know that's not what this capsule is, but I thought the model would look cool as a grenade. After changing the color and making it gray, I set up the collision effects as well as set up the pool of fire. On a collision, it checks below it to see how far it is from the ground. If it's close enough to the ground, it'll spawn a fire AoE that hits multiple times. If it's too far above the ground, it'll just explode. Alright, so that's the project so far. Like I said before, this is just getting systems in place so things will be a bit easier down the line. Moving forward, I want to focus a bit more on the Z-Knuckle, and I'm thinking about swapping out some of the regular attack animations. I also need to update the UI because there are way more controls in the game now, to the point where I think I'm going to kind of focus on tightening up the combat mechanics once the Z-Knuckle's at a point where I'm happy with, which I have some ideas for, but I'm going to save that for the next part. Anyway, if you'd like to try out the current state of the project and earlier versions, you can get it over on my Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, big thanks to my patrons. You all are the real MVPs. Also, thanks again to this video sponsor, Sleep. Click the link in the description and use my code for 10% off your order. But that's going to be it for this one. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.